Hello, everyone, and welcome to the monthly NASW Pennsylvania Chapter webinar. My name is Rachel Rhodes, and I am the new Membership and Communication Strategist at NASW. This is a free webinar series and is done as a member benefit and is available to members only. Webinars are done each month on the last Wednesday of the month at 12 p.m. and count for 1 CE credit. During the webinar, if you have any questions, type them into the questions section of the menu on the side. To obtain your CE credit, you must attend a minimum of 50 minutes of this webinar. After the webinar, if you attend that minimum of 50 minutes, you will receive an email with a link to complete the evaluation. The link will also be posted in the chat section near the close of the webinar. The certificate will be sent to you via email in a few days. Note that the certificates are not automatically generated and will be sent to you by one of our staff members. Please allow a couple of days before you contact us to say that you haven't received your certificate. Now, I would like to introduce our presenter, Stu Horowitz. Stu has been a social worker since 1987. He earned his MSW from Marywood University and is currently an LCSW, ACSW, and QCSW. He has been a member of NASW for over 28 years. Stu has worked with the chronically mental ill, has been a crisis worker, intake coordinator, case manager, and therapist. He has worked on several inpatient psychiatric units. Currently, he is a therapist at St. Luke's Behavioral Medicine. In addition, he coordinates the internship program and serves as quality assurance, professional development, and event planning committees. Several local magazines, newspapers, and TV networks have interviewed him on mental health issues. He has presented various workshops for NASW and other organizations in the community. Stu has taught social work courses at Marywood University, Northampton Community College, and Alvernia University. He currently teaches sociology and social problems at Northampton Community College. Stu has been a member of the PACE committee and chair of the Children and Youth Task Force, School Social Work Task Force, and the division chair meetings. He has also served on the Leadership Council for the Eastern Division of NASW-PA. Stu has been a member of the Board of Directors of Temple Beth El and was chairman of the Board of Directors of CRE B'nai B'rith Youth Organization. He has also served on the Board of Directors and is currently the chair of the Clinical Committee for Jewish Family Studies of the Lehigh Valley. Stu is also the current president of NASW-PA. Thank you all for being here today. Stu, I'm going to pass things over to you now.
Okay. Thank you, Rachel. So I want to wish Rachel a warm welcome. She's been with us just for about a couple of weeks. I believe this is the first webinar that you're doing. Is that correct for us?
Yes.
Yeah. Rachel and I have had an opportunity to talk on several occasions. I think I've enjoyed talking with her. I think she's going to be a very important asset to our organization as she stepped into the role of membership and communications staff person. So welcome, Rachel, and we're really glad to have you aboard.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So I was going to talk a little bit about myself, just to give you a little bit of background, but I think Rachel covered that. I'll just add a couple other things. One of those is that in addition to being the current president, and I'm entering my last year of my 3-year term, I was also vice president for 2 years. The other piece that I want to put an addendum to, because things have changed in the last couple months. I was a therapist at St. Luke's Hospital for 24 years. I've been in practice for 32 years, but at the end of May, I retired from practice. I am continuing to teach, and I am also supervising students who are working on getting their license in clinical social work. Maybe more pertinent to this discussion is my mindfulness experience. I added it up last night, and I have been meditating for over 60 years. My brother was meditating. I have two older brothers, and my middle brother, who's about 4 years older than me, when he was at college, learned to meditate, and I got very interested. And so back in my early 20s, when I was attending Wayne State University in Detroit, they offered a class on meditation, and I took it, and I started meditating. And I do it twice a day. Initially started meditating for 20 minutes twice a day, but now I can get into some really deep meditations that can go up to 40 minutes, sometimes even longer, which is okay, because that's part of the mindfulness experience, is to accept where you're at that time. About 5 years ago, I started doing yoga. I have to credit my wife on this one for getting me into yoga. She had said to me, I want you to do yoga. And I said, no, I'm not really interested, because I exercise every day for half an hour doing either Nautilus, free weights, or aerobics. And then I also stretch for half an hour. So I'm not really interested in doing yoga. But she kept after me. And so her birthday, which is on December 25th, Christmas Day, I gave her a birthday card, and I said, for your birthday, I will come to one yoga class. So 2 days later, we went to a yoga class, and I was sold. I continued to do it since then, and I was doing it once a week, and then I upped it to twice a week. What I have found from yoga is that it helps me actually my exercise, because even though I'm lifting the same amounts of weight that I lifted before I started yoga, the weights seem lighter. And it also stretches parts of the body that I thought I had stretched, but realized I had never stretched before. And so yoga focuses mostly on the body and relaxes the mind. Secondarily, where meditation focuses mostly on relaxing the mind, and secondary to that is relaxing the body. I have done a number of presentations before on mindfulness. I've done them at St. Luke's, where I used to work, and I've also presented at the conference, our annual conference. In addition to that, when I was at St. Luke's, I ran a mindfulness group. And as a therapist, I would often bring mindfulness concepts and techniques into my practice. So one of the things that I hope that you'll get out of this is not only how this will benefit you individually, but if you are a clinician, that this will also help you in working with your clients. So the goals and objectives for today are to learn about the origins of mindfulness. So we'll explore a little bit, talk a little bit about the early origins, and talk about later times, like in the 60s and more currently with John Kabat-Zinn, and how he really helped to bring this mindfulness concept to a larger society. Another objective is to understand the core principles and just what is it that mindfulness is about. To make the connection between the meditative techniques, our bodies and thought processes, and the world around us. So we'll talk about concept, we'll talk about theory, we'll talk about research. We'll also talk about making that connection to the techniques and how it impacts on our experiences within ourselves and outside of ourselves. We will be practicing and implementing breathing exercises throughout this hour. When we get to that point, I will explain to you what to do, what we're going to do, how we're going to do it. There is a caveat to this. Generally, when I present in front of groups, I'm able to see people and I can see when they're finished, and maybe I need to give them a little bit more time. Obviously, being on a webinar, I can't see you. So it makes it a little bit more difficult. So what I will be doing is setting up for each exercise the amount of time that we're going to allow to do that. As we're getting close to the end of that time period, I'll let you know maybe 10 or 15 seconds before, so that whatever you're doing, you can come back and focus and be mindful of the presentation, as opposed to just being mindful of your breathing or whatever exercise we're doing. And in addition to the breathing exercises, we're going to be utilizing additional methods. So we'll talk somewhat about the senses, we'll talk about nature, and a few other things. And also, again, just a reminder, because one of the things that I can't do when I'm presenting in person, if somebody has a question, I can see the question, and somebody raises their hand, and I can stop and answer the question. Can't do that now. So for the sake of continuity, what I'm going to be doing is I've scheduled in here about 3 different times for to ask questions for about 5 minutes each, time allotting for that. But there will be time to ask questions. So as I'm presenting, if at any point you have a question, type it in. Rachel will be getting them. And then when we get to the question section, she'll be reading the questions to me, and I will answer your questions. You see on the screen, I put on here, mute your computers to avoid any background noise. So this would just help with the presentation. But I've been told that given this technology, and I must admit to you that my son has told me that I'm a technological idiot, and that's true. I won't argue with that. If I ever have a problem with technology, I always call him to get help. So, but I have been made aware that that there is no sound, but just in case, make sure that your computers are muted. We will be, as I mentioned, practicing mindfulness techniques, and I will give you the time frame for practice. It would be useful too, if when we're practicing, if you turn off any devices except whatever device you're using for this. So if you have a phone, a cell phone, you might want to be in a quiet place to do that, if possible. You might be in your home in a room. You might be in your office. You might be outside taking a walk when you're doing this. The important thing is to minimize as many distractions as possible. So if you're in a room with a lot of kids around, if you go to a quiet place, that might be helpful. And as I said, there will be time set aside for questions. So, mindfulness is rooted in Buddhism. And it also has a conceptual kinship with Greek philosophy, existentialism, naturalism, transcendentalism, and American humanism. So one of the main core values of Buddhism is meditation and the meditative techniques. The Greek philosophers were the early philosophers who were concerned with the cosmological theory that was based on natural phenomena. The existentialist said that the individual is a self-determining agent and is responsible for their choices. Naturalism takes into account natural elements and forces, and the belief that all phenomena are covered by laws of science and theological explanations are without value. Transcendentalism relates to the realities, that the realities are to be discovered by the study of processes of thought or emphasizing the intuitive and spiritual above the empirical. And humanism emphasizes human interest, values, and dignity. It also emphasizes ethical theory and practice, reason, scientific inquiry, and human fulfillment. And it rejects the importance in the belief in God. All of these philosophies emphasize self-awareness and rational and benevolent actions. So the core of mindfulness is the engagement of attention and awareness in the absence of reactivity or judgment. So as we practice mindfulness, as I mentioned earlier, when we may be focusing on our breath or a mantra or a phrase, when our thoughts will drift. And when they drift, it's important to not be judgmental. It's important to be aware that they're drifting whenever that happens, and paying attention to where you're at without judging yourself. So often I hear from people who are learning mindfulness is I didn't do it right. So that there's no right or wrong way, and when we start to talk about right or wrong, we're judging. Mindfulness takes that beyond just the meditative state, but also into our everyday lives and how we may tend to judge ourselves or judge others rather than to be aware and accept. And that's the second point of the core values, that it's open and it's accepting attention to and awareness of our internal and our external sensations. So what might we be thinking or feeling in the moment? Mindfulness emphasizes being in the moment. Or what might we experiencing outside of ourselves? What might we be smelling? What might we be seeing or hearing? And how aware are we of that? And that's going to be an exercise we're going to do a little bit later. So we will focus on the senses. So what mindfulness does is it's a connection. So in Western culture, it's a variety of meditative techniques that helps put us in better touch with our own bodies and the world around us. So it's taking those techniques and connecting to ourselves, to our bodies and the world around us. And we're able to do that because what mindfulness does, what these meditative techniques do, is they calm the thought process. They help to relax the brain. Our brains are always going. And we are bombarded by internal and external stimuli on a constant basis. Even when we're sleeping, when we're dreaming, we're being bombarded. And when we're being bombarded and the mind is constantly going, we can have difficulty being aware. So this morning, and one of the things that I like to do every morning, especially now that I'm retired and I can do it, is I have a enclosed back porch. In my enclosed back porch, I have a lawn, and behind the lawn, there's a row of trees. And like a wildflower is growing underneath the trees. And then beyond that is a field. And when I bring people who haven't been to my house before back to the back porch, they say to me, wow, this is wonderful. This is so calming and relaxing. And that's what I like to do. When I'm sitting out there, I'm with nature and I'm giving myself a moment to calm myself and to be in touch with nature. I actually have a bird feeder out there, and I like to watch the birds going into the to the bird feeder, getting food. And today I saw a couple squirrels, two of them at the same time standing up on their hind legs, and I was like, "Wow, I've never seen that before." So mindfulness was coined by Jon Kabat-Zinn. And you may know this as mindfulness-based stress reduction. But Jon Kabat-Zinn coined it and did his research at the University of Massachusetts, the Maharishi Mahesh Yogi came over in the 60s from India and brought with him transcendental meditation. And transcendental meditation was the focus of a mantra, which is a nonsense syllable that the meditator would repeat to themselves over and over again. When I learned meditation, we were taught that we were given a mantra and everybody had their own individual mantra, and that we weren't to share it with anybody. That theory has been debunked, and it was debunked by Herbert Benson, who did a research at the at Harvard University on meditation. And what he found is that it didn't matter whether you used a nonsense syllable or a phrase or focused on an image. The concept here was that you were focusing on something at that moment, and that could bring about a meditative state. And in addition to that, yoga came over in the late 60s, the early 70s, and not in its form, because as it's had been practiced by many people in the Far East, it was very much related to spirituality, and to some extent it is now too here in the United States. But it wouldn't sell. It felt that it wouldn't sell in the United States as a spiritual belief, a Mid-Eastern or Far Eastern belief. And so they changed it and they kind of Americanized it, but the benefits are still the same. And there's still, you can get a meditative state from it. When I finish my yoga practice, at the end of the yoga practice, they always have us sit quietly for about 5 minutes. And as your body's relaxing, you feel your mind relaxing. And sometimes you can really feel like you're at a different plane or a different level. The concept is very simple for meditation. And that is that you sit and you listen to your own body and breathe, or you focus on a mantra, as I said, which is a nonsense syllable, or you focus on a specific image, or you focus on movement, like walking, talking slow, taking small steps while paying attention to the sounds and feelings around you. Now, meditation is not one thing fits everybody. I benefit primarily from doing the meditation by sitting still. I've also been told when we learn to meditate that we should do it in a chair. I find it beneficial when I meditate to do it lying down, primarily because when I do it in a chair and my head goes down, my chin goes down to my chest, I kind of get a little bit of a stiff neck afterwards. So I'm better off doing it in lying down, where my wife, who also meditates, prefers doing it in a chair. Some people prefer, and this is one of the things to figure out for yourself and with your clients, is they prefer the more internal process, like the meditation. Others prefer the more external process, like focusing on something outside of them, or taking that walk, or smelling something. There are different types of meditation practices. Zen involves sitting on a chair. It can be in a lotus position, kneeling or counting the breath to quiet your mind and achieve stillness and unhook from constant thought. Vipassana, or Vipassana, focuses attention on one or more sensations in your body to develop insight into the nature of self and reality. Loving kindness is meditation. This meditation helps to cultivate positive feelings towards self and others by meditating on those you love and imagining extending that love to those with whom you have conflict. The mantra, or the Om or the I'm meditation, is a chanting meditation, and it's a repeating of that syllable Om or I'm or some other nonsense syllable. So the mantra and the transcendental are tied together. But transcendental meditation is practiced for 20 minutes twice a day to induce a level of deep rest and calm within the body and brain. Yoga meditations encompass chakras, kundalinis, tantra, kriya, and trakata, which is also known as gazing. The chakra meditation entails focusing on one of the 7 chakras in the body, from the base of the spine to the crown of the head. The kundalini and tantra meditation involve cultivating and unleashing powerful energy that's harbored at the base of the spine. The kriya meditation is geared to connecting with a higher power, and the trakata meditation involves focusing on specific objects. So within the practice of yoga, there are different types of yoga that achieve different things. And then there's contemplative prayer. And this stems from a Christian tradition, and like mantra meditation, it involves focusing on one word over and over in an effort to clear the mind. So for myself, when I pray, I don't focus on the words. I'm more focused on the melody and not the meaning of the words. Once for myself, I start to focus on the meaning, I'm going into that thought process of analyzing as opposed to just experiencing. There has been research done on prayer that was done about 10 years ago, maybe longer, that showed that prayer unleashes chemicals in the brain that can help with anxiety and depression. So at this point, we're going to do an exercise, and we're going to take a minute and do some deep breathing. So before we start, again, a reminder to turn off any devices, close your eyes, take deep breaths, and listen to your breaths. Pay attention to your breath. Now, you can close your eyes or you can keep your eyes open, whatever you prefer. So I'm going to start in a couple seconds. Remember, as we get close to the end, about 10 or 15 seconds, I will let you know. So I hope you're in a comfortable position, and here we go. Okay, we're going to end in about 10 seconds. Okay, so I hope you're back with us. We'll talk somewhat about the research. So mindfulness helps prevent the body from going into the fight or flight mode. Okay? And remember from Psychology 101 or any courses if you've taken that when the body feels stressed, the body gets triggered, and we either go in a mode that we're ready to fight or we're ready to run. When this happens, the executive functioning of the brain shuts down. And this is where we assess situations rationally and choose the most beneficial option. I mentioned earlier about we're under this constant stimuli. So think about this in terms of the stimuli that we are focused, that we are constantly under. The use of devices, especially in today's world. Okay? We have computers and cell phones and iPads and iPods, and people are constantly on it. You know, when I teach my class at NAC, I have to tell the students to put away their cell phones, because they have to be finding out what's the latest, what's going on with this person or what's going on with that person. We're bombarded with working multiple jobs. You know, for myself, when I was working at St. Luke's doing therapy, I was doing that. You know, seeing clients, sitting on different committees, sitting on boards, as was mentioned, teaching, being involved with NASW. So there was that stress. People fret about their bills. Healthcare, how am I going to pay this healthcare bill? What about my insurance if I don't have any? If I have a medical problem, how am I going to pay for medication? Or just sometimes the anxiety of that you know that something's wrong and you have to go find out what it is, but you're anxious to find out what that could be. Job security. And there's a lot of other stressors around us, just the noise. My son and daughter live in DC, and I live in more of not a real rural section, but I live in a quieter section than in Pennsylvania. And every time I go down there, it never fails that I'm always hearing sirens going in DC several times today. Out here where I live, maybe once or twice a month, and when I'm in my home. So noise can cause stress too. So when we are under this, and when under the stress hormones are at a higher level, and they induce multiple neurological events. And these events can inflame the body cells. When this happens, it interferes with our ability to regulate our emotions and behavior, which make it more likely to choose unhealthy coping mechanisms. So some people may turn to alcohol. Some people may turn to stress eating. A lot of times when people are stressed, they'll just go for the quickest thing to eat, which would be the junk food, could be the candies. And we know what happens when you eat a lot of sweets, right? So you eat a lot of sweets, it gives you that boost of energy that you need because you're so emotionally drained because of all the stress. You get that boost of energy because your blood sugar levels go up, but then when the blood sugar levels go down, you crash and you can feel lethargic or even have a feeling of depression. And so the next thing that you want to do is you want to reach again for the candy to give you that boost of energy. What mindfulness does in this cycle is it inserts a pause because it trains the brain to observe rather than to react. So it's almost like you're taking a step back. And when you do that, the executive part of the brain is better able to kick into gear, and it overrides those impulses to go for the alcohol, to go for the food, the junk food. And it does this because so then when you practice mindfulness, it's able to kick the executive functioning part of your brain in because it triggers neurochemicals that send a signal to shut off the fight-flight reaction and bring a sense of calm. So over time, the area of the brain becomes responsible for triggering stress responses, though that part of the brain that triggers stress responses has less power over our behavior. So the more that we practice, the more power we have over our behavior. And this is not something that we do just once and we're going to feel the effect. When we go to exercise, if we were exercising, lifting weights or running or walking, we're not going to feel the effects the first time. It'll take several weeks before we feel the effects. And the same thing is true with mindfulness. So the areas now for responsible for calm are now gaining more power over our behavior. And practice is practicing not reacting. Practicing is practicing, not reacting. And that's what mindfulness teaches us. Practicing is preparation to be more mindful in the rest of our life. And the goal is to have a sense of calm, focused awareness and attention, and not to react. So mindfulness, the research has shown, diminishes feelings of loneliness, reduces higher risk for cardiovascular disease, reduces the risk for earlier death, increases a sense of stability, helps us to better handle and resolve conflicts, and makes more informed and rational decisions. And this leads to participating in more things that make us feel joyful. And I highlighted on the bottom of the slide, you realize you're part of the universe and feel connected. That ties into everything else that I've listed above. So that when we are realizing that we're part of the entire universe, those feelings of loneliness, that perception, research has shown, can help offset higher risk for cardiovascular disease and earlier death. And with our bodies and minds being healthier and more stable, we're much better able to handle and resolve conflicts and make informed and rational decisions, as well as participate in things that make us feel joyful. So tending to breathe or noticing thoughts come and go without judgment and sitting peacefully can bring immediate boost to emotional well-being and mental clarity. So I'm going to do a little switch here. Before we get into doing this next exercise, I'm going to do the questions after, but I'm going to do any questions now. So Rachel, are there any questions?
Yes, we have 3.
Okay.
The first one is, I'm wondering if you have any suggestions on getting colleagues and clients to buy into engaging in mindful practice. I've talked with clients and colleagues until my face is blue about mindfulness and its benefits, but I have a difficult time getting people to step up into that space. Any tips?
So one of the things that I would recommend that you do with clients is you don't have to introduce it to them as mindfulness. You can just introduce the practice of it without saying that it's mindfulness. Many times I had clients come into my office, especially patients that were anxious and panicked, and or people who were very upset and holding on to their feelings, and you could see that they were having shortness of breath. So just kind of think in terms of the criteria for both anxiety and shortness of breath. And one of the things that I would just have them do, which is a mindfulness technique, is breathe. And that's all I would do with them. Just breathe. And it may take them a couple breaths, or you may have to say, take a deeper breath. But once they do that, they start to feel better. And sometimes it's just about breathing better, but sometimes the emotions come pouring out. With staff, I think once you can show some success with your clients and tell your staff about what you've done in terms of the techniques, that becomes a selling point to staff. The other thing you can do is, if you know other people who are using mindfulness, you can get them to talk about it as well. Next question.
Can you recommend any practical books for clients?
There's a book on transcendental meditation. There's well, I have used a number of different sources in my, when lecturing on this. I use a magazine this time that I'm going to, is my source. It's really, and the reason I saw this, and I opened it up and I went, this is really a great resource because it really breaks it all down very simply. And it's called The Power of Mindfulness. I'll show you that slide at the end. And it's put out by Centennial Centennial Health. Also, the internet is a great place to find information, and any information you can find, any books on yoga or books on by John Kabat-Zinn are highly recommended. And the third question?
I recently started doing therapy with a man who was diagnosed with fibromyalgia over 10 years ago when he was a teenager. He says that he has tried relaxation and meditation strategies in the past, that he has experienced increased anxiety during his attempts, and thus he is convinced that mindfulness techniques increase his anxiety and are not helpful for him. What would you recommend for someone who is wary due to previous experiences that were uncomfortable?
Okay. So if the mind, could we repeat the first part of the question? Did the participant ask state what techniques they were using with the client?
Hang on, let me find that one again. So it said that he was getting anxiety from, the mindfulness stuff, and let me see.
Okay, it doesn't specify what technique was used.
Oh yeah, if they could specify that and resubmit that question.
Yes, that would be helpful.
Do you want to go on to the next one? There is more.
I will go on, and then we'll come back to that in a little bit, okay? So we're going to do the next exercise. This time what I'd like you to do, again, just reminders, turn off any devices, close your eyes, take deep breaths, and listen to your breaths, okay? But one of the addition to this is I want you to observe without judgment any thoughts that come and go from your mind like clouds passing through a sky. Just like clouds passing through a sky. Now, I put on here, we're going to do it for 2 minutes. Because of time constraints, I'm going to limit it to 1 minute. So get into your comfortable position, okay? Remember, deep breaths, listen to your breaths, and observe your thoughts without judgment. Here we go. About 10 more seconds. Okay. We'll do that. So the benefits for mindfulness are less stress, focused attention, fighting disease. You even feel better if you're already sick, and it helps break bad habits and improve relationships. So there's one important thing that if you take anything from this webinar is this. Take care of your breath because you will have it for the rest of your life. We don't really think much about breathing, but mindfulness teaches us to focus on that. The breath is the fundamental in the relaxation process, and it helps keep us in the moment. Even if we're not meditating, if you're feeling under a stressful situation, take 3 deep breaths. It'll help clear the mind and may put you in the moment and give you a different perspective on what's going on. So the more breathing is controlled, the faster we have a sense of calm. The calm is regained. When we're on overload from psychosocial stressors, then we feel stress. And this triggers the sympathetic nervous system. That's the part of the nervous system that controls heart rate, digestion, metabolism, sleep, etc. And that's the part, the physiological part of our body that puts us into the fight-flight reaction. Of all the autonomic functions in the body, the only one you can really voluntarily control is, you said breathing, you're right. That's the only one we can control. So deep breathing stimulates the parasympathetic nervous system. And the parasympathetic nervous system is responsible for returning the body to its normal functioning that was triggered by the sympathetic nervous system. And this restores composure and calm. Research has shown that breathing rapidly can be calming, but not relaxing. Rapid breathing, a minute, which is about a minute, about a minimum of 7 to 8 breaths per minute, would not be relaxing. 3 to 4 breaths per minute can create a meditative state, but those breaths are not quite create a sense of alertness. Ideally, it's 5 to 6 breaths per minute that is the right spot. Okay. So again, another practice exercise. We're going to do the 5 to 6 breaths for 1 minute, and then I'm going to add something onto that. So again, make yourself comfortable. Take those deep breaths starting now. 5 to 6 a minute. About 10 more seconds. Okay, so as I said, I was going to add something onto that. And what I'm going to add on is, I was going to take 5 minutes. I'm going to make this more 3 minutes because of time constraints. So we're going to sit in a comfortable position with your glasses off if you wish. Close your eyes, or if you choose, you can keep it open. You're going to start by taking the deep breaths that we just did and continue through the meditation. And what you can do is you can either focus on your breath, and this is what we're adding on, focus on the breath. You can choose a word like chocolate, if that's what you want, or silly, or funny, whatever word you choose. Or you can choose a phrase like, I will be good to myself, I am kind and caring, or whatever phrase you choose. You can listen to a sound. Maybe it would be listening to the birds outside, or maybe the car's going, if that helps you. Or you can concentrate on an image. Maybe it's something in your room. You might see a picture, or might be just staring at a blank TV screen. Or doing the mantra, which is the nonsense syllable. And I would recommend at this juncture to use Om or I'm or something else that you come up with. So let's take 3 minutes right now to do that, and I'll let you know when we're about to finish. And here we go. 10 more seconds. Okay, so when we go to questions, just one other thought about the breathing, and a caveat to that is that you also need to check with your patients too about their medical conditions. So people who may have COPD or asthma or some other breathing ailment will find more, will have more anxiety when they're asked to take to breathe. So that would be something that you would want to skip with them. Rachel, questions?
To follow up on that question, she said, I didn't use any mindfulness techniques with him. He reported that any relaxation techniques he tried in the past resulted in anxiety. Okay.
So I would go back to the client and ask him specifically what techniques he used. I'd also want to know where he learned, how he learned these techniques. And once I know that, then I could assess with him whether or not he needs to make some adjustments to what he's doing. Or, and my sense is, from what I'm hearing, if he's doing mindfulness that's more internal, he may benefit from more external techniques. But you would need to assess that to know what he's tried before offering some alternatives. And in the few minutes we have left, I'm going to share just a couple alternatives with you. Are there any other questions?
Yes. If you had to choose between exercise or meditation, which would you choose?
Is that if you're asking me personally, I would choose both. I would not choose one or the other. What I find for myself, that the meditation clears my mind, but the exercise, especially when I stretch in the morning, and gets my blood flowing and gets the oxygen flowing to my brain and to my muscles. And so when my head is clear, the exercise gives me the physical energy that I need, and that would include yoga as well. Are there any other questions?
Yes. Is there any evidence that effectiveness of mindfulness for children?
There is. I don't have the research in front of me, but one of my yoga instructors in the area that I live in has been going to schools to work with children with emotional problems and ADHD, and she's being asked to go into more and more schools because her working with yoga and working with children and doing yoga and mindfulness techniques is helping them to calm down and to focus better. Okay.
The next question is, what are the other things on your slides besides tending to breathing, noticing thoughts? Please review that slide again.
Okay. So could you repeat the first part of the question, Rachel?
What are the other thoughts on your slide besides tending to breathing and noticing your thoughts? Please review that slide again.
Well, I'm going to move to that in a few minutes. I'll show some of those slides. Are there other questions?
Yes. I work with deaf and hard of hearing individuals. Some of them report closing their eyes increases their anxiety as they're shut off from their environment. I've suggested they focus on a candle or an image. Any other suggestions?
Candle, image is good suggestion. Focusing on sound. As a matter of fact, I'm going to move to those slides. I'm going to skip these. So you can focus on senses. You can focus on sound, have a focus on sound, touch, vision, smell, or taste. When I do the technique of vision with my clients, I give them the choice of keeping their eyes open or closed. And I'm having them look at something either on the wall or something outside, but they can also focus on smell, something that they may be smelling at that time, or something they remember smelling. The same thing with taste. You can have them touch something. And people with hard hearing, probably sound would not be the best, but people who get who are just get anxious from closing their eyes, they can always keep their eyes open. You don't have to do this with your eyes closed. Okay. Other questions?
Yes. Is the fibromyalgia managed well? If it is not, some mindful techniques can overactivate the central nervous system.
Yeah. So because of that, you have to really be cautious about, and when you go in and talk to somebody about doing this, and being aware of their of that condition. And I would just have them try it. And if it's overactivating them, it would not be a technique that I would recommend for them to do. But there might be something else. And I'm going to get to that. And this kind of what was the question that was raised by somebody before about other techniques. So one of the other techniques is the 5 senses, but also nature. Being out in nature can be mindful. So, and experiencing whatever helps people to relax and calm, whether that be, the ocean, the water, exercise itself, by the way, looking at a flower, a sunset. I was in California last year for my nephew's wedding, and after the wedding, my wife and I and my brother and sister-in-law rented a house, and every night we take about a 4 or 5 walk down to the cliffs where there would always be about 50, 60 people, and we watched the sunset over the Pacific Ocean. That's one of the things that I remember. It was very relaxing. Okay, and there's a lot of research to support that. So people with fibromyalgia, it might not be, it could be not doing the thought process, but could be having them be out more in nature. Could having them do acts of gratitude. Could be simply doing an act of loving kindness. Can be opening the door for somebody. Food, tasting your food, slowing down. What does the food taste like? Coloring has been shown to be effective. Get a coloring book and have them color, because that can relax the mind. So people who may have an overactive system, nervous system, may benefit more from doing things that are more active, like walking, talking, coloring, exercising, than doing the more internal processes. Okay. Okay. Were there any other questions?
Yes. Is there any research to suggest the effectiveness of mindfulness with people who experience various diagnoses? Is there any research that shows the effectiveness by age, adolescents, older people, or, for example?
I would recommend that you, again, John Kabat-Zinn, professor by Dr. Walbert, has done research on the topic. And there's another one. I have to go back to one of my earlier slides. Let me go to that in a second. So just kind of like, I want to wrap up and I'll finish answering that question. But again, in summary, mindfulness, there's early origins. The core is attention, awareness, and acceptance. Connects to our own bodies and the world around us, and it impacts the nervous and autonomic nervous systems. It has many positive benefits. Breathing is essential, and there are many ways to practice. So let me get back. There was one other researcher, somebody who's done work on this. I know there's been a lot of work done on ADHD, I think it was. Yeah, Dr. Adrian Tarrant. Rachel, are there any other questions?
Yes. How do you know when to end your own meditation session?
There are never ways to do that. I end it when it's over. If I'm going for 20 minutes, I'm fine. If I'm going for 40, that's fine too. But my brain will also tell me, like, you can't go for more than 20 minutes because you have to be someplace or you have to do this. So that kind of becomes automatic. You can also get like little bells that you can set or set your alarm very softly to let you know when the 20 minutes are up. Okay. All right. So we are wrapped up. Rachel, are there any other questions?
I believe that's it. So thank you so much, Stu, for that wonderful presentation, and thank you to our members for attending. The link to the evaluation has been posted in the chat section and will remain up for a few minutes. A reminder that after you submit your evaluation, if you attended the required 50 minutes, you will receive your CE certificate via email within a few days.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, for attending. If you have any other questions, you can submit them to me at the national office. I have a connection with the email to the national office to my own personal home computer, and I would be happy to answer them. Thank you for attending.